So imagine a heavily armored mountain dwarf, a hulking half-orc, a halfling, and a celestial-touched healer walk into a crowded waterside tavern.
I mean, it sounds exactly like the setup to a joke.
Right. It sounds like a punchline. But in the tabletop world we're looking at today, this isn't a joke at all. It's actually a matter of brutal, calculated survival.
Oh, absolutely.
So today we're taking a deep dive into a leaked session log from a Dungeons & Dragons game. And we're going to use it to explore why, this specific game has captured so many minds.
Because it's really not just improvised theater.
Exactly. We're looking at how a group of players navigates this incredibly harsh narrative using what is basically the game's underlying physics engine.
Yeah, that concept of a physics engine is really the perfect way to frame this.
Right, because it's a system of rules that turns a simple supply drop into, well, a morally terrifying nightmare.
Right. Dungeons & Dragons, at its core, is like a shared hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a hallucination governed by math, by probability and these strict mechanical rules.
Right, like if you jump off a cliff in the story, you don't just float down.
Exactly. The physics engine dictates exactly how much damage your character takes when they hit the ground. And the specific setting of our session log today really dictates just how punishing that ground is going to be.
Yeah, because this isn't the high fantasy superhero style world that I think a lot of people associate with modern D&D.
Not at all.
The Game Master set this adventure in Mystara. Specifically, we're starting in the Grand Duchy of Karameikos, in this teeming, deeply segregated capital city called Specularum.
And Mystara is so grounded, it's an older, much more unforgiving setting.
Yeah, heroism isn't like a glamorous career choice there. There's no pension plan.
Right, in Mystara, most people who try to be heroes just end up dead in a ditch.
Yeah.
The environment itself is hostile. You fight because if you don't, your town burns down or you starve.
Which brings us right back to that tavern in Specularum, a place called Rusky's Rest, where our four characters are sitting around a table near the kitchen. And this brings up a really important point about how you actually exist in this world. When you build a character to plug into this physics engine, you're making two massive choices that basically dictate every interaction you have.
Your race and your class.
Right. And for anyone who might be new to how tabletop mechanics work, race doesn't just mean skin color here.
Right. It dictates your biological species and your cultural baseline. So whether you're a human, a dwarf, an elf.
And your class is your professional toolkit. It's like, what is your job on the battlefield?
And this party is such a fascinating cross-section of those mechanical choices. Like, look at the half-orc sitting at the table, Threshtog.
It's okay, yeah.
Mechanically, his race as a half-orc gives him literal biological resilience.
Right.
It's the ability to take a fatal blow and just refuse to go unconscious.
Oh, wow. Just pure stubbornness.
Exactly. And his class is barbarian, which means his job in the physics engine is to manage frontline chaos through just pure primal rage.
But narratively, he's a former Duke's Guard, right?
Yeah.
Like he realized he couldn't stomach polite society and just chose to live on the bleeding edge of the wilderness.
Right. So he's the muscle, but muscle with tactical military experience.
Got it. And then sitting right next to him is Dane Ironsong. He's a mountain dwarf, so he's biologically stout, resistant to poisons.
And his class is fighter. He's disciplined light infantry.
But the detail I absolutely love in the log is about his grandfather. His grandfather played a violin to inspire troops in battle, so now every Ironsong is required to learn an instrument.
It's so good.
Right. So Dane is sitting in this grubby tavern in full plate armor, just lugging around this giant cello-sized string instrument called a viol.
It's a brilliant blending of mechanics and backstory.
It really is.
And rounding out the group, we have two characters who actually share the same class. They're both clerics, which means they channel divine magic.
But their races change how they operate completely, right?
Completely. So Njovik is a Shamar, meaning he has a touch of angelic ancestry. So he's built to be a traditional radiant healer.
And then the other cleric goes by the Timekeeper. He's a Lightfoot halfling.
Right.
So he's maybe, 3 feet tall? Incredibly nimble. But instead of focusing on healing, his specific subclass allows him to manipulate the mechanics of time itself.
Yeah, so you have these four very different toolkits sitting super awkwardly at a table.
And then their mutual friend, a dwarf named Gundren Rockseeker, bursts through the crowd. He slams 5 tankards of ale on the table and offers them a job.
He needs them to escort a wagon of mining supplies north to a frontier town called Phandelver.
Right. and he offers them 10 gold pieces each upon delivery.
Which, if you look at the economic tables of the game, is roughly equivalent to maybe $1,000 in our world.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
Because the math just does not check out. You just said Mystara is a world where stepping outside the city walls means a goblin or an owlbear might literally eat you alive.
Right.
So why are these guys taking what is essentially a gig economy delivery job for a measly grand? I mean, that is not risk your life money.
And that right there is exactly where the narrative overrides the math.
Okay, how so?
Well, if this were a video game, you might do it just to clear a quest marker off your map, right? But in tabletop role-playing, the best hooks are tied to deep personal history.
Oh, so they know him.
Exactly. Gundren didn't just hire 4 random mercenaries off a notice board. Threshtog, the barbarian, knows Gundren intimately. They fought side by side during these savage goblin raids years ago. Threshtog owes this man his life.
Okay, so there's a blood bond there. The gold is really just a polite formality.
Precisely. And Dane the dwarf. He's Gundren's cousin.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, they are already secret partners trying to rehabilitate a lost, ancient, dwarven stronghold called Wave Echo Cave.
And the clerics.
Njovik and the Timekeeper had previously met Gundren and deeply impressed him. The gold gets them in the wagon, sure, but the true motivation driving them out of the safety of Specularum is loyalty, family, and shared history.
That makes a lot more sense. Okay, so they take the job. They load up a wagon with picks, shovels, salted pork, and they head north out of the city on a major trade route called the Duke's Road.
And Gundren rides on ahead of them to handle some business.
Right. He tells them it'll be a 4-day drive to an elven town called Riflian, and then 2 days on a smaller trail to Phandelver. And what struck me in the log is that those first 4 days on the Duke's Road are completely uneventful.
But uneventful mechanically doesn't mean it's dead air narratively.
Right.
The players use this time to figure out their group dynamics, and there's a fascinating sociological mechanic at play here during those 4 days.
Yes, the vial. So every night, when they stop at a Wayfarer's Inn, Dane pulls out that massive stringed instrument and plays for the tavern patrons.
Yeah.
And the log notes he specifically does this to ease the human population's prejudice against seeing a half-orc, an Aasimar, a dwarf, and a halfling traveling together. Is that just flavor, or is there an actual game mechanic happening there?
Oh, it's absolutely a mechanic. In the game engine, a human innkeeper in Karameikos is likely going to have a hostile or suspicious disposition toward a monstrous-looking half-orc walking into his establishment.
Right, they'd probably call the guards.
Exactly. So Dane is proactively using a performance check rolling a 20-sided die and adding his specific charisma modifiers to artificially manipulate that disposition.
Wow.
He's using art to mechanically bridge a racial divide so they can just buy a bowl of stew without a tavern brawl breaking out.
It's incredible world building. Yeah. But as they travel, that safety on the Duke's Road starts to feel a little artificial.
Because it is. The Duke's Road is heavily patrolled by well-disciplined, heavily armed legionnaires.
Right.
They actively hunt bandits and keep the monsters pushed deep into the woods. This creates a completely false sense of security for the characters.
And honestly, for the players sitting at the table, too.
Yeah, exactly. It establishes a vital contrast. Safety in Mystara is man-made, and it only exists as far as a legionnaire can throw a spear.
And they find that out the hard way. On day 4, they arrive at the elven town of Riflian. The innkeeper hands them a note left by Gundren, who is still riding ahead of them.
Right.
The note basically says, goblin activity is spiking on the trails up ahead, and he leaves them a few healing potions.
Very ominous.
Very. And the next morning, they leave the paved safety of the Duke's Road and turn west onto the Achilos Trail. And the environment instantly turns hostile.
Yeah, the log describes the Achilos Trail as basically just muddy ruts carved into the wilderness. The trees form a canopy that blocks out the sun.
It's like driving off a freshly paved multi-lane highway straight onto an unmapped logging road in the middle of grizzly bear territory.
That's a perfect analogy.
So half a day onto this trail, they hit a bottleneck. They find 2 horses wandering the road ahead, sniffing at ransacked saddlebags.
Yeah.
And before the players can even process the scene, arrows fly from the wooded embankments right behind them.
And this is the moment where the physics engine of the game completely takes over.
So let's break this down, because I think this is the core of what we're looking at today. We don't have a video game rendering this fight for us.
Right.
How does the game actually transition from a conversation in a wagon to a life-or-death battle. Like,
Yeah.
how did the goblins even manage to shoot them before they realized they were there?
Well, it starts with a mathematical contest that happens behind the scenes.
Okay.
The game master, who is running the world, decides the goblins are going to set an ambush. And the rules of D&D allow creatures to use their environment to hide.
Right.
So the game master rolls a stealth check for the goblins. They roll dice to generate a number representing how quiet they are being in the thick brush.
And then what?
That number is then compared to the party's passive perception, which is a static number on the player's character sheets, representing how observant they are when they aren't, like, actively looking for danger.
So it's essentially the stealth math versus the awareness math.
Exactly. And because the goblins' stealth math beat the party's awareness math, the physics engine grants the goblins a mechanical advantage called a surprise round. Narratively, this means the goblins act before the party's brains can even process the threat.
That's why Tog, the barbarian, takes a jagged goblin arrow straight into his back.
Yep.
And another arrow nearly takes off the halfling's head, all before anyone even draws a weapon.
Right.
Okay, so the ambush is sprung, they are bleeding, they are surrounded, but they can barely see the enemies in the brush. From here, the game enters action economy, right?
Yes, exactly.
Where time slows down into 6-second rounds and everyone gets a turn to act.
Yeah, it becomes a highly tactical board game. And this is where we see asymmetrical teamwork in action. The timekeeper, the halfling, realizes they can't fight what they can't see.
Right.
So he uses his turn to cast a spell called Toll the Dead on the thicket where an arrow just came from.
Now, in the log, it notes this is a cantrip. For the listener, why does he use a cantrip instead of unleashing his most powerful magic right out of the gate?
Because a cantrip is the bread and butter of a magic user's toolkit.
Oh, okay.
It's a fundamental spell that they have practiced so obsessively that it doesn't cost them any magical energy. They don't burn a limited spell slot to cast it. He can cast Toll the Dead all day long.
And the way it manifests in the world is wild. It's not like a laser beam. The game master describes an ominous, deafening, magical gong ringing out through the forest.
It's so cinematic.
Yeah. One of the hidden goblins fails its mathematical saving throw against the spell, and it just drops dead as its soul is violently torn from the material plane by the sound itself.
It's an incredibly effective way to eliminate a hidden sniper. Meanwhile, Njovik, the celestial cleric, sees Threshtalk bleeding heavily from the arrow wound.
Right.
So Njovik uses his 6 seconds to cast healing magic on the barbarian.
Which feels like common sense. But mechanically, why prioritize the half-orc who just got shot over, say, taking cover?
Well, it's because of how hit points work in this engine. Hit points aren't just meat points or how much blood you have left.
Okay, what are they?
They represent stamina, luck, and physical durability. Njovik knows Threshtalk is their tank. His specific class mechanics allow him to absorb massive amounts of damage that would instantly kill the halfling or the dwarf.
Ah, I see.
If Threshtalk's hit points hit 0 and he goes unconscious, the goblins will just overrun the wagon.
So Njovik isn't just being nice.
No, not at all. He's mathematically managing the party's resources to keep their structural front line intact.
And speaking of the front line, we get to the melee combat, which is where Dane, the dwarf fighter, absolutely shines. But he doesn't just get to run up and hit things.
Right.
He gets jumped by a goblin skirmisher right on the back of the moving wagon. Dane is trying to swing his heavy warhammer, but he's standing on shifting crates of mining supplies.
Right, and the physics engine demands a toll for that environment.
Yeah.
Dane likely had to roll athletics or acrobatics checks just to keep his footing while fighting. It limits his effectiveness.
Oh, yeah. But eventually, the goblin makes a mistake, slicks on a crate of salted pork, and Dane just crushes its skull with the hammer.
Exactly.
While Dane secures the high ground on the wagon, Threshtalk is down in the mud, doing exactly what a barbarian is built to do.
Yeah, the largest goblin rushes from the thicket wielding a rusty scimitar. It lands a flurry of slashes across Threshtalk's bare chest.
But because Threshtalk has activated his mechanical rage ability, he actually takes half damage from physical attacks, right?
Yep. He just absorbs the cuts, swings his honed battle axe, and buries it deep into the goblin's ribs, instantly killing it.
The synergy here is flawless. Like, if they had all just panicked and run into the woods swinging swords, the hidden goblins would have sniped them to pieces.
Completely.
If the timekeeper hadn't used his cantrip to break the stealth advantage, they'd be fighting ghosts. And if Njovik hadn't maintained Threshtalk's hit points, the front line would have collapsed.
It's chaotic, but it is perfectly organized by the rules.
Yeah.
Eventually, the last goblin breaks and runs, and silence returns to the Achilles Trail.
And this is where the tone of the session shifts dramatically.
Hmm.
They transition in an instant from a high adrenaline combat encounter to investigating a crime scene.
Right, the immediate threat is gone, so they have a moment to examine the debris that started the ambush. Dane checks those two wandering horses in the road.
He looks at the stirrups and ransacks saddlebags.
And he rolls an investigation check and realizes, mechanically, based on the size and shape of the gear, one setup belongs to a dwarf and the other to a human.
And you can feel the dread set in for the players.
Yeah.
Because Gundren is a dwarf, and he was traveling with a human named Sildar.
Yeah.
Freshtalk rolls a survival check to track footprints in the mud, and he spots a small hidden path heading north into the deep woods. They find drag marks.
And then Dane finds a dropped silver amulet in the mud. He positively identifies it as Gundren's.
Now, if we look at this purely objectively, the logical, safe move here is to get back on the wagon.
Oh, absolutely. They were hired for a delivery job. The mechanics of their contract are simple. Deliver the goods to Phandelver, collect 10 gold pieces each.
Right, they could just drive away and let the local authorities handle a missing persons case.
Exactly. They have zero obligation to walk into the dark woods.
But this is where character background completely overrules the mechanics of the game. Threshtog used to live in Phandelver. He fought in the Goblin Wars.
Right.
He knows intimately what goblins do to their captives in Mystara. He flat out refuses to leave anyone who might still be alive to that fate.
And Dane isn't going to abandon his cousin. So a simple gig economy supply run instantly becomes a desperate rescue mission.
Yeah.
They compromise by hiding the wagon off the trail, and they start creeping up this hidden path.
And this leads to what I think is the most intense and frankly the most shocking moment in the entire session log.
Yeah, it really is.
As they follow the drag marks, they hear a noise in the brush. It's one of the goblins from the ambush.
Yeah.
It didn't actually die. It was critically injured, stabilized, and is now crawling away, leaving a blood trail.
They surround it and capture it. And what they do next is a masterclass in tabletop problem solving.
Okay, what do they do?
Well, they need information about where this path leads, but the goblin is bleeding out and unconscious. So the clerics use a tiny bit of healing magic on it, not enough to let it fight back, just exactly 1 hit point to wake it up and stop the bleeding.
Clever. They force it to guide them up the trail because goblin lairs are notoriously rigged with traps.
Right.
The goblin is terrified, but it reluctantly points out 2 cleverly staked pit traps hidden under leaves, which Threshtog manages to disable. But as they get within sight of the entrance to a dark cave, the goblin stops.
It starts shaking and muttering about someone named Clark.
Yeah.
It says Clark will kill it for failing the ambush, and it absolutely refuses to take another step.
So the players start debating above the table. Like, what do they do with this prisoner? Do they force it inside at sword point? Do they tie it to a tree outside and hope it's still there when they get back?
And while the group is debating, the brutal reality of this world slaps you right in the face.
Yeah, Dane, the dwarf, who plays the beautiful viol at the ends to bridge cultural divides. He just grunts, lifts his heavy warhammer, and crushes the bound goblin's skull.
Yeah.
He murders a surrendered prisoner. Decision made. Threshtog picks up the body and tosses it into the thick brush so it won't be seen by patrols, and they just creep up to the cave entrance.
It's a jarring moment.
Whoa, wait.
Yeah.
Jarring. It's horrifying. He just bludgeons a surrendered prisoner to death while it's cornered.
I know.
Isn't Dungeons & Dragons supposed to be a game about heroes fighting evil? In any other context, executing a prisoner of war who just helped you avoid a trap is a straight-up war crime.
Yeah.
How does the game master justify that kind of action from a quote-unquote good character?
Because you have to look at the cold arithmetic of the physics engine they are operating in. This isn't a modern battlefield with Geneva Conventions, and it isn't a sanitized fairy tale.
Right.
This is Mystara. There are no respawns. They are a small group of adventurers about to walk into an unknown, fortified enemy lair to try and rescue a family member before he is eaten or tortured to death.
But the goblin was terrified. It wasn't going to fight them.
You don't know that, and Dane certainly doesn't. If they leave a treacherous, trap-making goblin alive behind them, even tied up, what happens if it slips its bonds?
I guess.
It runs into the cave, warns this Clark character, and suddenly the party is flanked and slaughtered. Leaving it alive is a potential death sentence for the entire party, and by extension, for Gundren.
So it's not malice, it's risk management.
Exactly. Dane's action perfectly encapsulates the unforgiving tone of this specific world. Survival often requires you to do things that, in the light of day, look villainous. It's brutal, but in the context of the setting, it is entirely rational.
That is heavy. But it really brings the entire journey we've tracked today into focus. We started in a warm, crowded tavern with 4 strangers taking a simple delivery job for pocket change.
Yeah.
We saw how the physics engine of the game forces an Aasimar, a halfling, a dwarf, and a half-orc, to use their totally unique mechanical toolkits to survive a deadly ambush in the mud.
Right.
And we ended up standing before a dark, foreboding cave, having just committed a brutal execution in the name of a rescue mission.
It perfectly illustrates how a set of rules and dice can generate an incredibly complex, morally gray narrative. The math creates the boundaries, but the player's choices within those boundaries create the story.
And for you listening, whether you ever plan to roll a 20-sided die at a table, or if you're just trying to navigate complex, chaotic group projects in your own real life, there's a tangible takeaway here.
Absolutely.
Understanding everyone's unique class,
Yeah.
their specific professional skills, their cultural backgrounds, their hidden motivations, is the absolute key to surviving the ambushes that life throws at you. You need your support systems and healers just as much as you need your heavy hitters to manage the front line.
That's a highly practical way to look at it. But I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on that incredibly tense moment at the edge of the woods.
Okay.
Think about Dane's decision to execute that surrendered goblin on the path. In a world ostensibly divided into heroes and monsters, how quickly do the lines between the two blur when your own survival and the survival of your family is on the line?
Wow.
Does adapting to a ruthless environment fundamentally require you to become a little ruthless yourself? Consider the metaphorical wagon you're driving in your own life.
Yeah.
What would you have done standing there at the mouth of that cave with a hammer in your hand?